Welcome to the bi-weekly Special Fathers Network Dad Zoom call on divorce and being present. I'm David Hirsch, and I'm thrilled to moderate today's conversation on a very important topic. The 21st Century Dads Foundation was founded as a result of the fact that there's 24 million kids, 4 out of every 10 in America, that are growing up without their dads. Part of that issue is the incidence of divorce in our culture. And I'm thrilled to be talking today because when kids are growing up without their dads, they're 4 times more likely to grow up in poverty, 9 times more likely to drop out of high school, and it has a big impact on the increase in the number of teen suicide and pregnancies, the amount of crime and incarceration in our communities, and the amount of drugs and alcohol that kids use. So we have a handful of dads who are Special Fathers Network mentor fathers who've agreed to join us and share their story about their experience with divorce. And what I'd like to do is have each of them make a brief self-introduction, name where you're from, number of children you have, the special needs that your child or children have, and then we'll come back and have you each tell a little backstory, 2 or 3 minute backstory on what your situation is from a family perspective, and what was the, if you will, path to divorce, and perhaps a little bit of how you've navigated past that. And then we'll come back and we'll ask questions of each of you. So in no particular order, let's start with John Felageller. John, the Zoom stage is yours.
Sure. Hi, David, and hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm John Felageller from Highwood, Illinois, Chicago native, born and raised. I am relatively newly divorced, at least as of April of 2020. I have one son, Christopher, who's 12 and autistic. He's in 7th grade and attends Northbrook Public Schools. I am a school teacher. I currently teach special ed at a private school in the downtown area. I've been in education most of my life, except for a brief foray into the nonprofit world. On the side, I do a whole variety of things in terms of advocacy and volunteerism, blogging, speaking, writing for a variety of organizations around the country, and of course, very proud to be an integral part of the Special Fathers Network and proud podcast dad number 65.
Thank you, John. Rob, over to you.
Thank you for having me back on again, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing as well. I am the father of 3 children. I'm from New Jersey originally, born and bred, Bruce Springsteen fan. You have to be, I think. Yankee fan also. I know it's going to be tough for some of you to hear that. I live in Colorado Springs, where I've been since 1998. I've got 3 children, a son who is 19, first year in college, unfortunately from his hotel room. I wish it were a hotel room, from his bedroom right now, a 17-year-old senior in high school who has Down syndrome, and a 14-year-old just starting high school. I'm a financial planner. Part of my practice is working with families with special needs members, and I'm also the author of several books on the subject, and podcast guest and speak around the country on the topic as well. So thanks for having me on again for the work you do.
Thanks, Rob. Chris, over to you, as long as you agree to keep both hands on the wheel.
Kris Kazian. I am a fire chief, originally from Illinois, Libertyville. Moved to Arizona about 2012, and then I'm in Colorado, up by Fort Collins area for the last 2 years. 4 daughters. A daughter who's 32, still lives in Illinois with grandkids. A daughter who's almost 26 in Arizona. And then a daughter who passed away when she was 2 years old. She'd be 18 now. And another one who's 15. And so no one left at home is my 15-year-old. And so I think that was the intro, what I want to do. And I think that's anything I missed, David.
That's good. Thank you, Chris. Okay. Robert, over to you.
Hi, my name's Robert Blackwell. I'm not nearly as talented as the rest of you. I'm a little math guy that owns a tech company and a table tennis company, and I have a daughter who's 23 years old. It's nice to meet you all.
Thank you for your humility, Robert. I'm glad that the 4 of you could join us. So what I'd like to do is just to go back around the horn. We'll just keep the order the same. It was arbitrary to begin with. And what I'd like you to do is maybe go into a little bit of the backstory, what your experience was maybe growing up, if you experienced divorce as a young guy, and then what transpired with your marriage, your first marriage. And if you could just share one idea with our listening audience, what is it you'd want them to know? If a dad is out there who's been through a divorce recently, or maybe his relationship is a fragile one and he's, sort of on the precipice of that. So we'll go back to you, John.
Sure, thank you. So I guess I'll just start with a little bit of backstory about my own family. I'm the product of a blue-collar, north side of Chicago family. My father was a truck driver. My mother was a secretary most of her life. I will tell you what I saw growing up today would have been characterized as extreme dysfunction. I had a father who drank every day, was at the bar every day, still went to work every day. But of course, the excuse was, well, he goes to work every day, so the drinking is not an issue. And then, of course, when I became an adult and met people who were in very high corporate positions and said, sure, I drink every day too, whatever. It doesn't take away from the issues that kind of behavior causes. And in the marriage that I saw my parents have, there was daily fighting, just back and forth. Some of it could get physical. And again, growing up, I thought, well, maybe this is just what it is. I certainly didn't want that for my own marriage. I didn't want to be the man that my father was in a lot of ways. And in a lot of ways, I didn't think I was in my marriage. I married a lovely girl from the North Shore of Chicago. She and I got along, I thought, very well. We've been together 17 years, married 15. I will tell you, first of all, that on the one hand, coming from two very different backgrounds, she more affluent and me not so much. We probably had a little different perspective and values in that sense, but for the most part, we agreed on things. And I will tell you that we did hit a rocky point, a very rocky point, about halfway through our marriage where we almost did separate, but due to the fact that we had found a very, very good marriage counselor, and two, we had found very supportive people, and a lot of this was faith-based, was church-based stuff. We were able to navigate that. And then lo and behold, last November, I received papers directly from my now ex-wife, just totally out of the blue. And there was no real explanation other than, just remarking on past fights we had or issues, that type of thing. There was a passing remark at one point about a lot of the advocacy and volunteer stuff that I mentioned I do. On some level, maybe that intimidated her or, was some issue for her on some level. But I think the thing that I would say is this, to anybody out there, to any of the guys listening, in terms of what I took from my experience and my marriage. And again, really still having a lot of question marks myself. The bottom line is this. First of all, if you are married and you have typical kids, there's still a fair chance you could wind up being divorced. And if you have a special needs child, you have a very good chance of being divorced. You need to lean into community and friendships and support networks even more so than anyone, whether you like to or not, whether you want to or not, whether it's convenient or not. I always, in my talks, talk about it being a 1A, 1B conversation. 1A being faith and 1B being community. If you're not a faithful person and religion's not your thing, that's okay. But you need somebody. You need someone to talk to. I will tell you that the day I got handed those papers, I immediately started picking up the phone. I was an emotional wreck, as you can imagine. But I had friends I could call, and some of them are actually here with us today, as a matter of fact. So the bottom line is that when you've got that support network, that makes all the difference. Could I have done anything differently? If there's one thing that I could speak out to is I thought that I had done everything I could. Maybe you check in with your spouse just a little bit extra. Maybe you find out what extra there is you can do to make sure that, they have what they need to kind of get through, taking care of your children, child, et cetera, or, any other help that they need. But, the bottom line is that if even if you do everything you think you can, you could still wind up as part of these statistics. What you do from that point on can make all the difference. I at least have a good relationship with my ex at this point. But again, a lot of that comes from the community that I was lucky and blessed to have and having those resources around me.
John, thanks for sharing. And it's not lost on me that, you've been divorced for less than a year. So it's all still very fresh. And I know that, it's going to take a while till the dust settles and you can put it all in perspective. So again, thanks for sharing. Rob, over to you.
Sure. It's always good that there's more than one Rob on this call. It's a good name. My situation's a little different. It's fascinating as I talk to so many more people in the world, how we get to certain inflection points from such different paths. My parents had a good marriage, they're still together, grew up in a suburb of New York City, and was able to use the best of New York, even though my dad works in New Jersey. My mom went back to law school. Really good models as far as I can tell. And now I've seen so many others, I still appreciate that they're still together, and probably they had their differences along the way. They just didn't necessarily show them to us very much. You can debate whether that was the right thing to do or not, but have a great relationship to this day. When I got married to my now ex-wife, I've been divorced since 2012, separated since 2011. I probably should have recognized some of the signs of that this wasn't going to be the best relationship for either of us for a long period of time. And we had therapy multiple times. The great thing about therapy, and if I can give any advice, I can't give a relationship advice, I don't think. Well, I've been in a good relationship now for seven years with Kelly, is that I resisted going to therapy at the beginning with my wife, and turned out that it was really one of the best things that I ever invested in terms of time. It wasn't good enough to be able to save our marriage. There were just significant differences and some things that were never going to come together for us in the way we perceived life and the way we reacted to therapy, we reacted to having children, just very different ways that we were going to go. And frankly, if I had been more emotionally aware earlier, I would have recognized that far earlier. That being said, had great times together, had awful times together as well, had great kids that are still thriving and seeming to do much, much better as a result of our divorce. But the opportunity for learning that came as a result of an intense relationship where we often butted heads in terms of the way we wanted to do things and where we wanted to spend both our time and money, and the learning that went into it were invaluable to me. And so if people listening are either at that stage where they're thinking about getting divorced, recently divorced, or maybe still post-divorce and haven't necessarily landed on their feet, there are so many resources that are out there. And I always initially thought of those as resources that were trying to fix me in some way, as opposed to resources where I could learn to grow, develop, and engage with the world in a new way. And once I put that hat on and found the right person for me, it was just fantastic and helped me give up all of the really the issues around the reasons we might have gotten divorced and whose fault was it and what were the pain points that could have been fixed. I really don't spend any time thinking about that, and I had some great advice about that probably 6 months after I got divorced of, I'm not going to be able to go back and fix any of that anyway. So it's really an opportunity to just figure out what is it about me that maybe attracted that kind of relationship, put me into that kind of world, analyze my responses to it and where I could improve those in all of my other relationships. And so that, again, is the biggest piece of advice for me, I suppose, is to take it as a learning opportunity, as painful as it is going through it, and as maybe painful as it takes to land on your feet in the right way. We had spent a good part of probably 2 years prior to separation, trying to figure out what's going on. And for me, that moment of separation was a chance to really live the rest of my life in a positive way. And I had done as much work as I think any of the therapists thought we could possibly do to make it work. And for whatever reason, we couldn't get there. So the hardest part for me, and probably the best learning lesson, is to be able to walk away without that anger, and either at her or myself, and embrace the learning that I got from it and the direction I could go from there.
Rob, thanks for sharing. Thanks for your authenticity. I know that this is not a topic that a lot of individuals, men in particular, feel comfortable talking about. So one of the things I admire about each of you is that you're able to just sort of put it out there, right? It is what it is. And I'm hoping that not only is it somewhat therapeutic at some level, just to be able to talk and reflect on things, but that it's an example, a role model to other dads, right? To be able to put this stuff that we're bottling up and find difficult to express, out there, because it's real, right? If half the marriages in the country wind up in divorce, and the incidence of divorce in the special needs community is, reportedly higher, much higher. If we're not talking about it, we're doing ourselves a disservice. So thanks again for sharing. Kris, back to you.
So, my background is, parents were divorced when I was very young, alcoholic father of the 70s, so alcohol, drugs, big problem. And so I was really raised by a single mom who worked really hard. I had a younger brother. I had to raise him. He's a fire chief on the North Shore right now for a couple of North Shore guys, right next to Highwood, actually, almost in Deerfield there. So we grew up. I think I grew up fast and having to fend for myself and be caretaker and know what hard work looked like and know what it felt like to have a meal or not have a meal. And so that really set the stage, I think, for me and my foundation for understanding what divorce looked like. I was married pretty young, not like super young, but my oldest daughter was in high school. We never married, but we've remained friends the entire time and raised our daughter together as single parents or whatever you'd call that, as 16, 17-year-olds. So I have that experience, which is kind of unique. Then I got married. Oh gosh, I don't know how even old I was. Probably maybe 24, I guess I must have been. And I was married and pregnant pretty quick, and ready for divorce right after that. It was pretty quick. I was filing for divorce. And my daughter was 2 years old. I fought for custody, won custody of my daughter, sole custody of my daughter. When she was, by the time we got through divorce court, she was about 5. It wasn't going to work. That was a loser. Psychological issues for my ex. By no means do I think I'm perfect by any means, but we weren't going to fix that situation. So that's the divorce side of it. I think there were some great comments made about therapy. I quickly started dating my now wife. We've been together for since 1998. So was that 22 years almost, I guess, or more than 22 years. We started dating. We went to counseling before we were married, not because we were having huge troubles, but because we wanted a foundation. We knew there was challenges. She was going through a divorce. I was going through divorce. She had no kids. So I think, we talked about, having community, having religion. I'm not in the religion camp so much, but communities, where's where I went. I guess I took 1B, right? And so heavily committed to the community, having a sense of purpose, realizing that my life wasn't over. In some ways, and I say this in jest for especially the people that are fresh into this, the second time around was much better. That was my experience, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, because we want the first time to be right. But I've learned a lot about what I want as a person and what I'm willing to accept as a man, what compromise looks like, and really had to work to maintain the last 20. We've been married 20 years now this year. What that it hasn't been roses, that's for sure. Losing a child, having a child with special needs, and then losing a child, that's a double whammy in the divorce world. And we've persevered through that. Certainly probably had our moments where we've been close to, but we really at the end of the day come back to each other and realize what we want, what's important to us, and communicate that very, very much. Over communicate. That's one of the keys I think I take away. Therapy or counseling, having that sense of purpose, having someone to reach out to is really important. We lost that when we moved from Chicago, where we had a really strong core, to Arizona, and that was very difficult for us. Not the move, but not having our core friends and people we could communicate and talk to. And some of those difficult, challenging times were in that moment. And so we've been intentional now to try to make new friends in Colorado and create those bonds and things. So For newly divorced folks, it's not over, it's just beginning. The key is I've always focused on my kids, and that's, you don't divorce your kids. They're there. You got to be focused on them. And that's what, focused me to keep up, keep going, to put the good fight up where I needed to put the good fight up, and realize that, give in where I need to give in, because it's not, it's not about winning and losing. It's about taking care of your kids. They're the ones that win and lose. We're adults. We'll figure it out. So I think that's my spiel for now.
Kris, thanks for sharing. And just to summarize, you were a teen father, not married, got married, had a child, got divorced, and now you're married for a second time. And you have 2 children with Christy, your second wife. So you've had more experiences, sort of mother-father relationships than most people might have. And I just really appreciate you just being so matter-of-fact about what your experience has been. And the thing I took away was that the focus is on your kids, right? We're adults. Hopefully we can figure out what's needed, but we have to help make the right decisions for our kids. So thanks again.
That's right. And that third kid was a child with special needs. So yeah, teen father, divorced, got custody, got remarried, had a child with special needs, passed away. Yeah, so there's a lot there. I don't want to win an award by any means, but there's a lot going on there. So yes.
Thanks again for sharing, Kris. Robert, back to you.
My situation is similar to Rob's, except Rob's a lot smarter than me. I was just blessed with a family. I mean, I had the best family in the world. My parents, I've never seen my parents argue once in my life. My father, I'm the oldest of 5. I grew up in Wichita, Kansas. My father's 23 years older than me, and my mother is 20 years older, so they were pretty young, but they're people of really good character. My parents essentially said, you can do whatever you want as long as you follow a couple rules. Just be honest, do your best, be a good person. And my father's rule was, don't piss off your mother. And he was serious about it. My father essentially told all his kids, all of you together don't add up to your mother. So my father was really about treating my mother with dignity. I've never seen him yell at my mother, or conversely, I've never seen her yell at him, which is, they were pretty self-aware, I would say, being that young when I was born. So to me, I feel like I was blessed. I feel like I was blessed the fact that they were so young, and I said had no dough when I was young. So they were educated, but obviously didn't have very much money. They didn't come from families with money. They really had very good character. So I thought, on my mother's side, frankly, my mother and her 2 sisters are like extraordinarily beautiful women. And so, I thought, frankly, life was beautiful women kissing you, hugging you, and telling you they love you. So I would say I grew up, I would say, I don't want to call it being shallow, but I was just fascinated by really beautiful women. And I probably didn't look enough past that. I remember having a friend of mine when I was in my 20s who was Korean, and he told me that he was going to get married, but he had to get his parents' permission. And I said, what do you have to do that for? That doesn't even make any sense. He said, he told me that in their culture, and he was very self-aware for somebody who was in his 20s. He said, when you are getting married, a lot of times your head's all cloudy, it's all about love, but your family can see things that you can't see. And I, in retrospect, that was really great advice. So I ended up getting married, and I'm a person that feels extraordinarily blessed. So I feel like it's almost my duty to help people kind of realize their potential. And I spent a lot of time doing that. My ex-wife's family was totally the opposite. It was a very dysfunctional family. So my stress, I decided to get divorced because I didn't think it was right for children to hear their parents arguing. And it would really stress me for that to happen. So at some point, I couldn't take it anymore, because I thought I was gonna go crazy, frankly. And if something happened to me, who's going to take care of my daughter? So I have a daughter with is affected by autism. Now, I will say my ex-wife is an extraordinary mother. Yeah, we could never find a way to get along. And I'm just kind of a different person. I'm an extreme introvert. So to be honest with you, I'm only lonely when I'm around people. I'm never alone. I'm never lonely being alone. That's my personality. I'm just a numbers person that never enjoyed being around people. You know, I'm just a person that can be alone all the time. So I don't say I have a lot of, I'd say the closest person to me personally is, if you ever watch The Beautiful Mind, that movie, that's kind of like me. You know, I would say I am a not very emotional person, even though I care about people a lot. My life is driven by kind of accomplishment and making sure that my daughter is going to have a good life. Those are the things that drive me. I would not say that I'm a good relationship person or that I frankly care about it. I want to treat people well. I want to be a good person, but I don't really need people, I would say. I hope that doesn't sound bad, but I'm probably, and my ex-wife says she thinks that I'm really autistic myself, because outside business, I have almost no social skills. So my thing, for me, divorce was the closest thing to death. The worst thing that happened, other than my brother, who was really like my best friend. It wasn't actually my brother, it was my best friend. He died in a car crash when he was 28 with his sister. And that just destroyed my life, I have to tell you. I couldn't do anything for about 6 months. I was 28 at the time. So generally, I'd say, I don't want to say I feel sorry for her, but she probably needed things that I couldn't really give her. Even though I loved her a lot, and I still do, because I respect her a lot. But I would say I'm probably not, even though I try to be a good person, an honest person, I care about people, I'm probably not good marriage material. So I can't really blame her. I have to blame, I'd say, take a lot of responsibility for myself. But what was hard for me was being away from my daughter. It's still hard for me, frankly, because when I would come home, she just kissed me, hugged me, tells me she loves me, and that was it. Today, she'll call me at 7 o'clock every morning, say, I love you, I hope you have a beautiful day. She calls me at 7 o'clock at night, says, I love you, I hope you had a beautiful day. That's about as much interaction as she wants, but I would say in general, I'm blessed. I can't really give people advice because, you know, I can give advice on math, technology, and table tennis. Outside that, I can't give anybody any good advice. I will say in the beginning, have somebody, I don't know what to do when you're in a relationship, because I just have no expertise in that. I would, in advance, try to make sure there's compatibility, because the worst thing you can do is pick the wrong spouse. I think that is the absolute worst thing you can do in your life. So that's me.
Well, Robert, that is a lot to digest. My take on your situation, and I know you a little bit, but we've only known each other for a year or so, is that you are a super successful business person and have a lot of acumen, right? You're very humble as far as your accomplishments. But I think what I heard you say is that you struggle with relationships, which is sort of ironic because you had such good role models like you made reference to with your own family, and there's a lot to reflect on as far as what you had to say. So I want to thank you for sharing. Part of tonight's topic is not only divorce but being present, and one of the challenges that some fathers face is that they end up with joint custody or somewhat less than 50-50 custody. And I'm wondering if each of you can reflect on how that's transpired for you and some of the either A, challenges that you've had maintaining that connectivity to your child or children, and what are some tips or advice that you might be able to offer dads who might be listening to this broadcast. John, back to you.
Sure. Well, I just want to echo what pretty much all the other dads here who have spoken have said. It really all comes back to your kids, because when your marriage has been lost and there are kids, then 100% of the focus goes to your child. And I'll say in my case, we had an interesting family unit. I'm an only child, so was my ex-wife, and so was my kid. So we already had a small enough family, and then it just got a little bit smaller. So my child is really everything to me. I have extended family in the Chicago area I'm not really close to. I mean, the only person that I would say is really my family is my child. And so, he gets all the attention. We do have 50% joint custody. I will tell you that as nasty as some of the conversations went during the divorce process, when it came to our child, we both, brought our A game. We were both very adult and, respectful about it. And I would tell you that, has it made me a better parent? Well, things are still pretty new as you, suggested, David. So, maybe we'll ask that question in a couple of years. But one thing I know for sure is that when I have that time with him, I know how present I have to be, because those hours, those days, they are fleeting, and you still have life to deal with. I spend an evening with him. It's basically come home, eat dinner, hang out a little bit. If you're staying over, then it's let's get you ready for bed, and then you go to bed. So you've really got to be present as much as possible, and whatever that means. And again, I don't think it changed what I did with my child. I already knew what my child enjoyed, what we enjoyed doing together, being outside, going for walks, playing a little bit, physically, that type of thing. But the one thing I'll just share is this, that, was kind of unique, especially to this year, because we all know what a profound effect COVID has had. And in a lot of ways, we can speak to the negative effects of COVID. What I'll say is that COVID actually, I think, as difficult as it made the separation process, because as alone as I felt, and Robert, I'm actually the opposite of you. I thought that I was an introvert, and I learned the hard way, man, I need people, because, getting divorced and now a quarantine, and I'm going nuts, and I'm like, I didn't think this was me. But the one thing you find out is, with all of the changes, with the now e-learning at home, and with the concerns about, are we going to catch something, and how do we all stay safe? I think it made us better parents, better co-parents than we would have been had there not been a COVID. I think that it allowed for a greater sensitivity to caring for the other parent, quite honestly. And I even blogged about, some of the experiences I had where, I'd reach out to her if I heard something in the news, and I said, hey, this is important to know about. This is going to affect, the time with him. As soon as they announced in Illinois that all the restaurants and whatnot were closing, I said, this is going to be a problem for him, because, man, he loves going out to eat. So, I think it's a question of, you want to show up for your kids, and you want to be a good co-parent, but also in the midst of the crisis that we're all dealing with now, at some point this will end, and maybe life will never go back to being totally normal, but at some point there will be whatever we want to consider normalcy. We'll get there. what do you want to look like? Who do you want to be, and who do you want to show up as when you get to that point? Do I want to be a person who said, I fought my ex-wife tooth and nail, or someone who said, you know what, in the midst of this crisis, I actually showed up with some dignity and grace and said, you know what, you're still his mom. You know, the anger at some point will go away and you'll always be his mom. So how am I showing up? You know, how am I showing up today in the middle of all of this chaos? And then what is that going to look like when we kind of get to the end of it and things smooth out? You know, what do I want to feel about myself kind of at the end of that road? And so that's something that I think has made me a better parent, is wanting to be that, not just for my son, but then also reflecting back on me and the character and type of person I want to be.
Thanks, John. Back to you, Rob.
Mine is a little bit different. I don't co-parent with my ex. We parallel parent, and that's an unfortunate situation. But if I were to hold up a blank piece of paper, pretty sure she would say, no, it's full of stuff. I don't think I do that quite the same way, but I'm sure she would say something similar about me too. And so we tried to work together. We had a parenting coordinator our first couple of years of divorce to try and handle significant issues. Our communication between us is essentially non-existent, and it's actually better that way. One of the great things, again, it's always about learning for me, but let me step back. I got a great piece of advice from a friend of mine. His kids were a couple of years older. And he said, Rob, when you have kids, you think you're going to go home, you think you're going to get some work done, you think you're going to have some time for yourself, and you think all these other things are going to happen. And the more you can go home and just realize that it's just about your kids, and that, like you said, John, they're awake for a certain period of time. And if you can put all that other stuff that you're coming home with that you thought you were going to do away and focus on them, the better it's going to be for you, the better it's going to be for your kids. And so it was a great piece of advice, and one that I tried to live by. In the midst of a difficult marriage, it was almost impossible to do that because I had 1, 2, and then 3 kids, but I also had a wife where we just could not get along in terms of how a day was supposed to function when I got home, let alone what was happening when I wasn't home or when I was at work. And so it was just, you know, energy and focus and desire to do the right thing was hampered quite a bit by the relationship. And it was unfortunate. I'm sure she felt the same way. It was unfortunate for both of us. So I think getting divorced was, for us, again, the best thing. I have other friends who have had very similar circumstances. When they can manage their time together and then their time of parenting duty and take time for recharge and breaks that are either together or separate, they seem to get that all fixed out in a way that we never could. And I see it so often in the marriages that are a little bit rocky, that half of the battle is everybody wants time for themselves and time for the family in a structured and positive way. And the ones that figure out, yeah, hey, you do this on Saturday, I'll do this on Sunday, and we'll do everything together Sunday night, they seem to make it work a lot better than we ever could. And we had real reasons why that wasn't going to work. But when I got divorced, I was able to take that same piece of advice and when I came home, have time where it was really just me and the kids focused together, and it was fantastic. And then we did a 2-5 parenting schedule, and we still do. The biggest thing that was really hard for me was in that first couple of weeks, for sure, of being separated, and then even a little bit longer, was saying, all right, I've got time with my kids and I have time alone. And it was saying to that time by myself, that's time for me to do whatever I need to do around the house, do the extra work that I needed to do for my office, take my exercise pieces, and find time for myself, so that when I got back to those really intense days with the kids, I could focus on them without too much thinking about all the other stuff I had to do. And it gave me this great opportunity, I think, from when my kids were, I don't know, 4, 7, and 9 or something, till now when they're 19, 17, and 14, to really enjoy them and their growing up and be a parent in the way that I really hadn't been, because there was so much noise in the background. And so I can't remember what the topic was here, but it was something about divorce and then something about being present. And so for my case, it was a chance to really be present as a parent in a way that I couldn't, and then to be present in my own life in a way that I couldn't be either. And again, once I got past that time of guilt that I wasn't in their lives every day, and feeling like I was a lousy dad because I wasn't there, and not being around as much as I would have wanted to, and then embracing the fact that I actually had time for myself and time for them in unique ways. That really allowed me to have this mental switch just change over and practice being a better father and taking the steps that I could do that. The hardest part was the time navigation. I have 3 kids. So John, you're 1, 1, and 1. I was 3. My ex-wife we grew up as one of 3. We have 3 children. We've always used to having family around. It was a noisy household. And when I didn't have them in my house, I sort of missed all that noise for a little period of time. And then I realized, no, I could actually take a nap when I needed to and do the other things that I had to do. But there were times where I had to be in 3 different places at the same time for soccer, cheerleading, dance, whatever it happened to be, gymnastics, music after school. And I didn't have a great support network. I had friends, but my ex-wife had been the person in charge of friend groups and parent groups, and she was the huge connector. I'm more on the introverted side. For me, it's a couple good friends and that's enough. And it was a challenge, and frankly, it was good for me to have to figure out where I could support other parents and they could support me. And somehow it made it work, because I couldn't rely on my ex-wife to do anything in terms of helping pick up one kid when I had to be someplace else and have another arriving at the same time, and cook dinner and get them all prepared for sleep at the same time. And it was fine. It was a challenge. It wasn't one I was always up to the task for. Sometimes things got slipped and missed, but for the most part, it all got done. And along the way, I realized how great it is to be driving around with your kids, because it's the only time you get to focus. And we don't have phones in the car. We don't have phones at the dinner table. But when they're home, going from homework to maybe needing to watch some TV, to taking a break, those were times where I could be present with them and still am present with them. Now that the schedule is not so hectic, I actually try to take my kids to other places when I can, because that'll give me a chance, 15 minutes, 30 minutes in the car. And out of my 3 kids, my son, who's now 19, has lived with me since 8th grade. He took a gap year, so 6 years, I think, of that. I was sole parenting one of my children, maybe it was closer to 7 years, which was its own set of unique challenges and issues that, but again, I figured it's going to last for a period of time. I actually was able to do a whole bunch of things for myself somehow during that period of time. But at the beginning of it, I said, all right, he's living with me all the time. I got to be there for him. I got to work, do some things around the house, stay fit and healthy, and devote as much as I can. And I think that came from my my positive role model of my dad as a parent, who worked but was always there when we needed him to be. And my mom was as well, but modeling my dad a little bit more in terms of being there for my son. So that's it.
Rob, thanks for sharing. You didn't use the word compartmentalize, but I think that's what I heard you talking about, is when you're with your kids, be present, be focused, and then, there'll be time to do the housework or get to the work, and hopefully some time for yourself as well. So thanks for sharing. Kris, back to you.
I would think the be present piece is important. I think there's probably a misnomer for a lot of folks, and feeling that, okay, I want to be home and be present with my kids, and if I'm divorced, I'm going to have less time, and it's going to be horrible, and they're not going to know me, or whatever those things are. And the reality is, if you really think back about your life and how present you were when you were married, I would question, in many cases, maybe not all on the call here and the like, but when life's humming along and you're doing your stuff, you're busy, you're doing stuff, and you take all that stuff for granted. And maybe some of that's why you end up in the divorce situation sometimes as well, because life gets in the way. Priorities, competing priorities, things like that. So I've really looked to try and make be present. Well, I got custody of my daughter, so I had to be present. I had my daughter, who I got custody of after the divorce, had significant medical issues, not special needs, but more like a diabetic. She's not diabetic, but she has a blood sugar issue. Ended up in the hospital on a frequent basis. I had a wife at the time, or ex-wife, who I think was, likely Munchausen like. So I think she was trying to get her sick. She liked the attention. So I had a lot of battles going on as a young, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old child. Having to balance the knowing that your mom has got issues and things like that were very difficult. So being present is something I take very serious. But I think we put a lot of capital in there that I'm going to miss a minute or an hour here. And really, we had hours and minutes, but they weren't really good. They weren't really quality minutes. And so I think we should focus on the time we do have, make a good time of it. That doesn't mean they have to go to Great America or Chuck E. Cheese every day and get everything they want. And that's not it at all. But having that quality time, playing a board game or just being there to talk to them and hey, you look a little bit down today, that's being present and just being aware of things. And so I think that's got a lot of value. And I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to think that we're not going to be there enough and we're going to miss something. And I think that's undue pressure on the relationship with your child. And you should really just focus on the time you do have. Control what you can control. If it's a good relationship with your ex, like a few have spoke to, and a few have shared a similar situation to mine, it's not good at all. We got through all the hurdles, graduated college, except the wedding now. Wedding and a baby. Those are the two things that haven't happened in my daughter's life that I'm with a divorce situation. And I don't know if my daughter's going to invite her mom to the wedding. I mean, she will at the end of the day, but she's going to really struggle with that. And that's a heartbreak for me to think that she's going to struggle to ask her mom or want her mom at the wedding, at her wedding. And so, those being present is truly being present and aware of what's going on and raising your kids to the best of your ability and not counting seconds and the like. So that's being present for me. I don't, everyone else talk. I'll give up some time so we can get to the other questions or whatever that is. So I think that's what I got.
It's nice of you to complete some of your time sort of in a debate format, Kris. Thanks. Robert, back to you.
I would say again, I feel, I'm really lucky, even though, I'm divorced. Her mother is such a good mother that while she never really wanted to be divorced, it was a struggle for her to be divorced. She never really put my daughter in the middle of it. So whenever I really want to be with her, she lives with her mother, and that's what she wants. In fact, when she was in school, she told the teachers she wants to live with her mother and work with her father. So she gets to, before COVID, she was coming to work 3 days a week, which she really liked. Her mother is just phenomenal with her. She's dedicated her life to her. So I see my responsibility as making sure that they have what they need for the rest of their life. Me and Alia, it's my daughter's name. I mean, every week we go someplace, and before COVID, she would stay with me 3-4 days a week. So, again, that's not much advice I can give to people, but I just make sure that that Alia knows that I love her, and we go walking, and essentially when we're together, she's the boss. That's what I do. I just make sure that when we're together, she gets to do whatever it is that she wants to do. And again, I feel blessed. Listen, the worst thing my daughter has ever done is spend too much money on iTunes. And I think I'll take that.
Well, thank you for sharing, Robert. That's a good point. If the worst thing a child ever does is spend a little extra money on something like music or iTunes, count your blessings with all the challenges that it has to raising kids these days with drugs and alcohol. And I didn't mention this earlier. I think that I was dramatically impacted when my parents divorced and my dad moved away and became a dad to somebody else's kids. And it's been a driver in my life, right? That I wanted to challenge myself to be involved And you never know when you get married, how is your life going to proceed or turn out? And I think we have to count our blessings. And I think the fact that we're all dads and we all have kids that we're proud of and that we can pour our time and energy into is a dimension that I think we all share. So I want to thank you guys for sharing your perspectives, reflecting on your own relationships, some of the good and some of the more challenging things that you've experienced. And then about being present, because it's a good point that you made, Kris, which is, life's sort of busy. And until you don't have the ability to do something, if it's being with your kids, whenever you want or whenever it's convenient, I think that time becomes a little bit more precious. So thank you all for your authenticity and for sharing. And we'll go around the horn one more time just as a wrap up. And if there's something you'd like to share that maybe you didn't mention or that you wanted to emphasize, and then we'll put a cap on it. John, back to you.
Sure. I guess I'll just wrap up with saying, the thing that I always harp on again is that community aspect and support. And it was easy for me for all those years that I wasn't divorced and happily married to be able to, toot my own horn and say, well, this is how you do it. And then one morning you wake up and you realize you're like that group as well, that you didn't think you would be. But the fact is that support piece never goes away, and that always is something that needs to be consistent in your life. In the same way that you need to always have that consistent relationship with your child, and you'll never stop being their parent, and they won't stop being your child. Those who are your friends and family, and those that support you, ideally, hopefully, are not going to go away, and really lean into them. So that's something that I always like to really emphasize. And also too, if you are a special needs dad and you're in need of resources, again, reach out to, just some of these great tools and organizations that exist. Special Fathers Network is certainly one of them. I'm involved with a bunch. Just one very quick, short little plug. If you want to reach out to me, just type in John Felageller in the Google machine. I have a website, johnfelageller.com, and happy to connect with you or speak with you. And, anything you need in terms of resources, direct you that way. But community and support, they can certainly make all the difference, especially when you're walking through as difficult a time as this can be.
John, thanks for sharing. I like your reference to that Google machine. How it's really transformed our lives. So thanks again for sharing. Rob, back to you.
Yeah, John said it so well. And the thing that I underestimate in my life generally is that there's so many good people out there who have done and gone through the work we're trying to go through, and whatever happens to be in our life. And the more we can tap into experts is great, but more importantly, have those people around us who love us for who we are, and they're willing to support us and give us the good news and the bad news when it's supposed to come. John just said that perfectly. The community and the support that we get is the biggest piece of it. And that, there can be roadblocks. I'm going back through some child support issues. My daughter's about to hit guardianship, and it's not going to be easy. And so much of it is just noise. And if we can tune out the noise and focus on the important, that's what I need to remind myself of on a regular basis, that all the stuff that's going on and will go on in the next couple of weeks is noise. It's important. It's important to get it right. But there's lots and lots and lots of opportunity to get it right if we can focus on the important part, which is the safety, well-being, health, and full community access of my child. And so that's what I try and do. Just remember, a lot of it's noise, and there's a lot of good stuff. Being surrounded by a lot of bad stuff, and focus on the good, and life will be better.
Rob, thanks again for sharing. Kris, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm home and not driving, so I'm safely looking at the camera now. I think that there has to be hope and realization that this is just a journey that we're all on. None of us are alone in that journey. We're working to figure it out just like everybody else, and it doesn't work out sometimes. It doesn't mean we're bad people. Doesn't mean certainly we could have done bad things or whatever. I don't know anyone's details, but all things being equal, you know, there's opportunities for us to move forward, to learn from our situation. And I know a lot of people that this is, you know, this feels like the end of everything that they know, whether it's the child being divorced, you know, they're a divorce product of divorce, and they thought they would never happen to their kids. It's important that we just we keep our eye on the prize, and that's life, and keep going forward, and know that there's the next chapter, and even if it looks like this is the worst chapter ever, there's another chapter, and hopefully it gets better. And if that one doesn't, there's another chapter, and it does get better. Work at it. Have your relationships and friends. I just pulled into my house, and it made me really think about my neighbor who just went through a really, really bad divorce. He literally lived next door to me for about a month. I barely even knew the guy, and I really just went out of my way to spend time coaching and mentoring him in a really, really bad time. And he continues every time I see him. He was out of his house for 8 months. Just got back in the house, and she left. And, you know, he just always tells me, hey, thanks so much for taking time. You didn't have to do that. I didn't even know me as a neighbor. And I didn't need to know him as a neighbor. I know him as a dad. I know him as what he was going through, and provided support to him that he didn't have. And, you know, moved from out of state, no support network, all that stuff. And, you know, so we got to give back to that community piece. I think that John talked about. We gotta be there for folks, and just work through it, and keep your head going high. It doesn't mean that every day is great, zippity doo dah stuff, but just know that you'll get through it. You'll get through it. You'll look back at some point and say, all right, that sucked, but here I am today, and you're a better person for it. You're a better partner in your next relationship. Most importantly, you're a better parent to your kids, because like we just said, you're always a parent to your kids. That doesn't stop. And so I think that's my takeaway message for folks that are on the call, that are in a certain situation that might be struggling. And it's tough. It's tough. There's no doubt about that. And so I wish everyone the best as we work through this. So keep it up, keep on keeping on, I guess is the takeaway.
Kris, thanks for sharing. And Robert, I guess you're going to have the last word.
Okay. I would say if I would kind of leave people, I would say there are 3 things. I would say focus, faith, and love. This is what you get when you talk to math people. There's always a formula for something. So my formula is results equals the quality of strategy plus execution divided by time. So set specifically the results you want. Focus on what that goal is. I'm going to get over this by this time. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Be very specific about what your goals are. Create a strategy to get there. Create an execution engine. And typically that's people, processes, tools, facilities, and then set a time frame, because there's an inverse relationship between time and results. That's the first. The next is faith. I'm a very religious person. I believe in God, and I have faith that I'm here for a reason. I'm not here for myself. And I have faith that if I do the right things, I'll be able to deliver the right outcomes for those people that I'm responsible for. And the last is love. And I think love is a verb. I think love is a verb and more than a feeling. So I would say I love my ex-wife. I love her. It's not emotional love anymore, but I love her because I respect her and I want what's best for her. And obviously I love my daughter, but also there's other people that I love. And I think that you feel better as a person when you're thinking about other people. It says in the Bible, it's better to give than receive. And I think that's true. I happen to believe in God, and I think that the Bible, I happen to be Christian, is a reflection of natural laws. And if you pay attention to those natural laws, and I believe love is the same as gravity. It's a natural law. So if you focus on love as an action for those people that you're responsible for, even those people that are not in your family, if you know other people who are going through difficult times and you can be there for them in some type of way, it'll come back to you. The best way to feel better is to go help somebody else to feel better. So I'd say that's what I think. And I think we're blessed to live in a great country. Whenever I feel down, I start to feel guilty because I've been in lots of places around the world where I would say nobody would really want to live. I've been over to Africa and India and China and South America. Listen, most people would die to change places with any of us. So we ought to be thankful for that. And just remember that when you're going through the tough times.
Well, that was a lot, Robert. Thank you for sharing. I'd like to thank all of our presenters for their thoughtfulness, their authenticity, and for just sharing a little bit about their own personal experience as it relates to divorce and being present. I'll remind you that this is part of a series of biweekly Zoom calls that we've been doing for the last 3 or 4 months. The next Zoom call, which is on October 20th, is going to be on the topic of education after high school, which is a challenge for many families who are raising a child with special needs. What happens, basically once your child turns 22. So we've got another great roster of Special Fathers Network mentor fathers lined up, and I hope you'll be able to join us again for that. We'll include in the show notes some of the contact information and references that were brought up this evening, so it'll make it a little bit easier for people to be in contact for those that want to follow up. And I want to thank our editor and producer, Tom Couch, who also edits and produces the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. And we're up to nearly 120 interviews. So Tom, thanks again for all you do on behalf of the 21st Century Dads Foundation.
Can I just say something before you closing on your next issue? Because your next meeting, because it ties to something that we're doing.
Sure.
I've actually decided for Killer Spin, which is a table tennis company that I own, and me and my daughter always play table tennis together, that I'm dedicating that company to having an agent program for 2 sets of people, young people that are affected by autism and for young Black men. Those 2 groups are very challenged. So we're saying to our customers, if you're going to buy from us, please consider buying from one of our agents. And that is an extraordinarily difficult thing for parents, what to do about what happens after their kids turn 22. So I'm dedicating a whole company just to that.
Well, Robert, thanks for sharing. And I just to be careful about the alliteration. Did you say dedicating or dedicating?
Dedicating.
Okay.
The whole company is going to be aligned to that that mission. Because Killer Spin is about connecting to the people that you love and that need your love through play. So there are a lot of people that need our love. So just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you doing that. And we'll be sure to include something in the show notes about the Killer Spin company and make it as easy as possible to follow up with one of your agents. And as I understand it, Alia is one of those people. So anybody who's interested in upgrading their table tennis situation, I know that we could certainly stand to upgrade our table tennis situation. Killer Spin is the company you want to consider. So thanks again for tuning in. We hope to catch you at another Special Fathers Network Dad's Zoom conference in the future.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, David. Thank you for all you do, David.
Thank you.